Welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid. We had a show scheduled with Scott Ritter, but at the last minute, things changed for him. So he had to postpone the show until next week. And we hope that everything is good with him and we hope that everything works out with him. But we had to do an impromptu rescheduling of the show and then trying to schedule a quick live stream or whatever like that. If you would give me 1 second, because I mean, all of this is happening like right now. So give me 1 second. I'm trying to uh here we are right here. I'm trying to turn this feedback down, okay? I'm getting a lot of volume feedback, so I don't want that in the video, and I'm checking things also. Um Here we are right here. 1 second. All right, there we are. Now I shouldn't have any feedback from here. So an impromptu show. I had to schedule something real quick. And it's about the news. And so we will be doing a show um similar to the one that we did yesterday, and it's called Only in This Bizarro World of Politics Part 2. And what made me schedule this, besides the last minute rescheduling with Scott Ritter, was I was reading an article, and in this article, I saw something that it just verifies that the world of politics and geopolitics and the world's economic order is being flipped upside down, where you have right is wrong and wrong is right and in is out and out is in. So let me go to this article real quick, and hopefully Rashid will jump on with him. I just sent him the link. But hold on 1 second. Let me go to this. Give me 1 second. Uh, Here we are, right here. Let me give me 1 second with this. Oof. All right, here we go. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. Um, where is it? There we are. Now, do you know that America has pushed beyond all norms? You know that America has exceeded all limits. When the voice of reason for American politics and American geopolitics is Donald Trump. I mean, when I saw the article, when I saw the statements, when I read them, I said, "Oh my God!" There's no doubt that the American empire is crashing and burning. There's absolutely no doubt. The article was published today, February 3rd. As a matter of fact, it was published February 3rd at 8:59 a.m. Okay, which is not that far from right now. We're at 10:11 Central Time, and the article is titled "Trump Calls for Restraint in Arming Ukraine." Oh my God. Donald Trump is the voice of reason when it comes to Ukraine. What does that mean for American politics? Because remember, even as candidate Trump uh, broke all norms in politics by calling out people, the thing that was not right to do, and then becoming president and not fulfilling what he said he was going to do, but at the same time bucking the system. And now he's telling the deep state, he's telling the elite, he's telling the political class, the military class, and the economic class that there must be restraint in your actions towards Russia. Russia is not a peon power. Russia is not a push around power. Russia is a military, economic, and political entity that must be respected in ways. Now, this is what the article says, and I'm reading it with you right now for the first time. I only saw the headline and then the first sentence above the uh, article itself. Okay, so we'll be reading this article together for the first time. And this article says, strength and arm Ukraine. U.S. should send less weapon military aid to Kyiv and instead focus on a diplomatic solution to the conflict, the former president said. Wow, you think? You think? Now, all of the news outlets that called him irrational are looking irrational, and he's looking as the rational, sane one. I told you, only in this bizarro world, who would have thought that with the political elite, the deep state, and these power brokers in the West, that the one sane voice of reason in this conflict between Russia and the Eastern Bloc and the US, NATO, and the Western Bloc in Ukraine would be Donald Trump. I want you to think about that. For those who criticized him, for those of you who said he was a fool, he was ignorant, you don't become a billionaire being ignorant. You don't become a person who skates the law and don't have to pay taxes on your $1 billion and can continue to get loan after loan after loan after defaulting by being a fool. The people who he deals with are the fools. If he continues to not have to pay taxes, if he continues to use other people's money in business ventures, even if they lose, he's not losing on his side. He's not the fool. It is the people who are being conned or being brought into the position to leverage their money in those transactions. So when we look at the situation where Britain and America continues to say we're going to arm more, and then they talk their NATO allies, their European allies, into sending more weaponry that's being destroyed on the battlefield, along with the soldiers who operate the weapons. And if you continue to look at how they are bragging and how the Western media continues to egg on this losing battle in Ukraine and to demonize all that is calling for sound and rational thinking, who would have thought? Think about this. Who in their right mind, especially the way the media portrays him, who in their right mind would have thought that Donald Trump, right now, at this time, would be the voice of sanity and reason when it comes to U.S. and Western politics and geopolitics concerning dealing with Russia? Again, let me read the first sentence and I'll bring Rashid in. I see him in the booth. So I want him to listen good, because when I read this, I want to bring him in to comment on this. I want him to comment on this. So again, this article was published roughly a little over an hour ago. And the title is Trump Calls for Restraint in Arming Ukraine. The U.S. should send less military aid to Kiev and instead focus on a diplomatic solution to the conflict, the former president said. The U.S. should do its best to pave the way for a peace settlement in Ukraine while scaling back the military assistance Washington is sending to Kiev, former President Donald Trump suggested on Thursday. Now, stop right there. The reason this is a very dynamic situation is even Donald Trump understands by what he's saying that the supply of weapons is only alienating the West. It's only putting them in a hole, and is also economically untenable and unviable. It cannot go on in perpetuity because of the record amount of debt that the West has to put themselves in to try to accomplish solidifying their hold on Ukraine to weaken and break Russia's power. He gets it. Maybe he should have acted on some of that stuff when he was president, because it didn't just start with Joe Biden. Trump could have nullified all of that and pulled his troops out of Ukraine, but he didn't do it as president. But I'm saying he's making rational comments when the political elite are showing themselves to be irrational and unsound in their policy. So a little bit before I bring Rashid in, let me read just a little bit more of this article, and I'll have him to address this. It says, during an interview with American radio talk show host Hugh Hewitt, Trump was asked whether he believed the U.S. should send F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine to help in its fight with Russia. I think the United States should negotiate peace between these two countries, and I don't think they should be sending very much, the former president stated. However, he also complained that the U.S. had committed much more resources to prop up Kiev than the EU has. The other thing is Europe has to do much more because Europe is doing probably just a small fraction of what we're doing, he said, explaining that the Ukraine crisis affects Europe more than it affects our country. Stop right there. Now, that is the poignant point while bringing the co-host, Rashid, to ask his situation at hand. What kind of bizarro world are we living in when the rational voice in politics and geopolitics is Donald Trump and everybody else is irrational? So,
as I said before, Donald Trump is not a politician. Donald Trump is a businessman. Donald Trump is the bottom line. Politicians lie and don't care about no bottom line. What did one senator say? A billion here, a billion there, it adds up to real. They're not concerned about that. The politics are the ruling class, which Donald Trump is not a part of. Don't care about funds or how much money they get in debt. It just Dick Cheney or George. No, Dick Cheney said sanctions. Deficits don't mean nothing. He's not looking at the bottom line. And Donald Trump is not a part of this of their circle. So these people today, they ain't concerned about no bottom line or how much money they spend. As I told you before, people are not looking at the American dollar the way it really is. It's nothing, absolutely nothing. The other governments done woke up onto this. That's the reason why they're trying to get off of it. Here you got one country work and they have to have a bottom line where America don't have to have no bottom line. So they can just spend $31 trillion. Why not $631 trillion? They can't make no. I'm still printing up nothing. They don't do anything to them. And Trump is the anti-establishment guy. That's the reason why they railed so much against him. Now, like you say, when Donald Trump got to be the source of reason, it really tells you how bad of a state they are in now. And I was reading an article where they were talking about they now see that Russia is too hard of a nut to crack. Now they want to pivot to some other body. That guy over there is real tough. We'll leave him alone. Let's find some other sucker that we can bomb and stuff. And he said it was going to be China, but keep your eye on the ram.
Well, listen, on two things again. We have Donald Trump being the voice of reason in this madhouse called Western geopolitics, and then we have a breakaway from the West by other nations. And this is a warning that was issued. It says warning issued for petrodollar. Refusal to use the greenback for oil payments around the world could undermine the U.S. economy, a former White House official has said. And most people don't understand, this is why America is so hell-bent on waging wars, putting bases around the globe, and occupying, because she needs to keep these people under thumb to continue to force them into dollar trade. So listen to what it says. The U.S. is facing serious economic risk as more countries around the globe move away from the dollar in energy trade, according to former White House official Paul Craig Roberts. Roberts, who served as U.S. Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Economic Policy during the Reagan administration, cautioned in an article published on Monday that the end of the petrodollar would have severe adverse effects on the value of the dollar, as well as on U.S. inflation and interest rates. Now, let's go a little bit further. He pointed to Saudi Arabia's recent announcement that it was open to accepting payment for oil in currencies other than the dollar. Now, I want to address something before I continue reading this. First of all, when Paul Craig Robert is telling you this, he's telling you that there is a tsunami of dollars outside of America. That if those dollars come back in America, it will bring about an rise in inflation, the likes of which you've never seen before. This is what he's telling the people. And he's also telling them that this affects the purchasing power. Now, you have this dollar here. If that money comes back home, it waters down the purchasing power of the dollar you have. And that means that it will take more dollars to buy fewer goods, which means you would have to work more to be able to buy less. This is what Paul Craig Roberts is essentially telling the people. So, and he talked about Saudi Arabia. I'm gonna make this point. I'll let you say something in just a second before I start back reading, but I got to make this point about Saudi Arabia. He says he pointed to Saudi Arabia's recent announcement that it was open to accepting payment for oil and currencies other than the dollar. Now, what's crazy about this is that that was just made public, but China and Arabia had already agreed for I think upwards of 50% of their payments to be done in yuan. So it was being done like that. It's just that China, becoming one of the largest purchasers of Arabia's oil, decided to talk to them and say, listen, man, we need to cut out this middleman because he's charging you and he's charging me and he's manipulating the prices and our economies. So let's just cut him out. So go ahead, Rashid. I know you have comments on this issue before I started reading the rest of the article.
Okay, what it is America haven't paying their bills since 1971. Everything been on the credit card. Now, how much debt has that? It's got real big. People don't want to. First of all, they don't understand that what this petrodollar did. Petrodollar. Everybody had to buy oil in dollars. So that means every country around the world had to have dollars. Oil is what moves your economy, moves your goods and services around. So if you don't have oil, then your society is stagnant, it's dead. So everybody had to continue on with the dollar. That's what made America able to run up all these massive debts, because nothing ever was going to come on. But what Paul Craig Roberts and the rest of them are saying, that the bill is coming due. And remember, since 1991, everything's been on the credit card. Right. Now, you got so many dollars out there, as we said before. The peso will make the American dollar look like a mustard seed. As it is now with the peso and the dollar, you would get a whole bunch of dollars and no peso. A whole bunch of pesos. I mean, a very little dollar. It's gonna be flipped. Once again, I think they said during the Civil War, had a Confederate money. You could have a whole house full and wasn't worth 1 cent. That's what's coming here. And the people do not see. They have no foresight.
Say that again.
They can't see what they have. No. I said the people don't have any foresight to see what's coming. You cannot borrow.
No, over the federal.
Not for 10 years. Not for 20 years.
No, the part about the Civil War. They're delaying our talk. I'm talking about, go back to the part when you were talking about during the Civil War and the Confederacy and stuff, like, start from that point, because they started breaking up your talk then.
From the federal, after the Civil War was over, the Confederate money, you could have a whole house full of it. They said it wasn't worth 1 cent. Nobody wanted it. You couldn't pass it off on them. This is what happened to the American dollar. The American dollar is going to collapse, and it ain't going to be worth nothing. All of the economists are telling you that. But if it don't happen to me right in and there, I can't conceive it. But it, like I said, you cannot keep borrowing on the credit card for not years, not 20 years, not 30 years, not 40 years, and not 50 years, and the bill don't come due. One day it's coming due. And it's all started with them pushing this Russian war. Russia is off of it. Iran is off of it. China's getting off of it. India is key. Everybody wants to get off the dollar, and the people in the Washington is panicking. They see the Ponzi scheme is falling. What's his name? Bernie Madoff. Right now, and all of a sudden, when the Ponzi scheme fell, he didn't have a cent.
Yeah,
that's what's going to happen to everybody in America.
And we're looking at it. We're looking at it in real terms. You know, I'm going to finish the line of reading. I want to show the people just in dire straits that the empire has become. She's become desperate. Again, what she's doing, whether it's politically or economically or militarily, she's throwing anything up against the wall just to see if it will stick, because she's hoping against hope. Most people don't understand this, because people say, well, why is America doing this? Why she is fighting for the life of her empire. This is why she's making irrational decisions. This is why she's alienating friends and enemies alike. She's fighting for the life of her empire. She knows that everything rests upon the dollar and maintaining global hegemony. If she's no longer able to pump the nations, if she's no longer able to bribe the nations, and if she's no longer able to threaten the nations and have them cowering in fear, then the whole rules-based, quote unquote, order falls to the ground. And she knows that. So this is why she's making and doubling down and tripling down and quadrupling down on failed policy after failed policy after failed policy. She's desperate. And that's what desperate people do. You know, when people have bills to pay and they've exhausted everything, they have no other avenue. They then go into a mode where desperation takes over. And desperation may even breed violence to try to maintain their way of living, or to maintain their position, or their I would say their look to the people and the way they present themselves. That may breed desperation, and that's why you see people going out and you'll say, I never thought that person would kill this person. I never thought that person would do this. Desperation sometimes breeds that. And we're seeing a desperate empire. Now let's go further on this. According to Roberts, if that happens, the demand for dollars and the currency value will fall. By billing for oil in dollars, the Saudis guaranteed worldwide demand for the greenback, he explained. This is a major threat to Washington's power and to the financial power of American banks. Here we go. This is what Rashid and I have been saying to you for the longest. Mr. Roberts is saying it. The former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury under President Ronald Reagan is telling you that this, what you're seeing going on with BRICS in the Latin American nations and Africa and what they call the global South, when they are now coming up with their own systems and they're interconnecting their systems to bypass the US and Western dominated SWIFT system. And when they're coming up with their regional currencies and they're connecting their trade through regional and nation and state to state currencies. This is sidelining the dollar, which means that America doesn't make a profit. which means that America cannot manipulate your currency or your inflation or your governments or the feelings of your people, because they no longer have that one thing that nobody else has. That is a direct threat to American exceptionalism, American prosperity, and American wealth. And the banks will do everything they can to prevent that from happening. And this is why we can continue to tell you that America is not a democracy, as she claims. America is a fascist nation. That is when corporate and government interests meet and they merge. So the banks and the weapons manufacturers all have a say in America's policies. So what is that? Fascism. And fascism, we know, is what? According to the definition from the other show that we did, and we read the definition. And fascism is a form of Nazism. And that's why America, the government, has no qualms about supporting Nazis getting into power in Ukraine. Do you see how it's all interconnected? It is all interconnected. So let's go a little further. And so I wasn't able to see, my screen was blinded for me. You might have been able to see me, but I was not able to see you all for just a second. So listen, it goes further, and it says this right here. And you'll hear phone ringing in the background. I can't get it. I'm live on the air, so I gotta continue going. But it says, this is a major threat to Washington's power and the financial power of American banks, the economist said, added. Robert noted that for half a century, the petrodollar has supported the value of the US dollar and ensured financing for America's large budget and trade deficits. See, America continues to borrow from others and then borrow from the future, a projected future generation. She borrows from the projected future generation. She lays today's debt on future generations, and she borrows from the nations around the world that she has differences with, that she deems as enemies, and yet she wants them to continue lending her. Crackhead politics. But this is Bizarro world. These are Bizarro politics. Go ahead, Rashid.
It is like someone having a balloon the size of the Empire State Building, and it looks massive. Oh, it's and then somebody come with a little pea and poof, it goes down to nothing.
Yeah.
Also, they don't have the leadership that they had with Nixon and Kissinger and what's his name, Paul Craig Roberts with Reagan, and what's his name, Jim Baker with Reagan, the foreign minister. I mean, the Secretary of State was under.
Jim Baker.
They don't have it.
James Baker.
Yeah, they don't have them type of James Baker. They don't have those type of people with them now. All they got is with a Sleepy Joe and Donald Trump, who's not a politician, and even the people behind those politicians, they're not the sharpest and the brightest bulbs in the briar patch. They don't have no sharp leaders no more. They got crash test dummies as leaders. And so this is why you make all them stupid moves. You be saying, you be scratching your head and say, why in the world would he do that? China is your manufacturer of the world, but I want to go and commit war on them. She supplies just about all of the gas for Europe with them. The Middle East supplies just about the rest of the people, which Russia don't have. Well, let's go and destabilize it. It just don't make sense unless the leadership.
Are they frozen? I guess StreamYard is like, go ahead, finish up, say the last part, because StreamYard cut you off in the last part.
I just said it shows you that the leadership is insane. They don't make rational decisions. There's no way what you see them doing is the act of a sane man. It's an insane man. Now you gonna go to war with Russia, a nuclear power, who and all that talk about we're gonna decapitate Putin in Moscow. It's just like it's sending this. We're gonna send F-16 air jets to there. Don't you know that Russia got the S-300, S-400, S-500, and S-600? They shoot the planes before and that stuff way before it got to Moscow. Shoot it out of the sky. But yet and still, it makes perfect sense to you. If you imagine, you can go.
Yeah. So again, this is bizarro land, as we say in American politics, in Western politics. Up is down, down is up, in is out is in, good is bad, and bad is good. It is unbelievable that people in today's time, with all this access to technology, with all of this access to what is going on with information, that people would willfully be ignorant of the time and what is going on. It is unimaginable that people would do this. Well, let's go a little further, okay? It says, Roberts noted that for half a century, the petrodollar has supported the value of the US dollar and ensured financing for America's large budget and trade deficits. The petrodollar supported the continuing role of the dollar as world currency after President Nixon closed the gold window in 1971, in effect ending the Bretton Woods system following World War II that gave the US dollar the reserve currency role. However, according to Roberts, in recent years, Washington has so abused the dollar's reserve currency role with sanctions and asset seizures. It's supposed to say asset seizures, but it said asset seizures, that many countries desire to settle trade imbalances in their own currencies in order to escape Washington's ability to threaten and punish them for serving their own interests rather than Washington's. And it goes further and it says, well, that is the end of the article, but it says this. The article stated, if the Saudis do drop the petrodollar, America will face stiff inflation and high interest rates necessary to finance U.S. budget deficits unless the Federal Reserve itself finances the deficits by printing money. In that case, monetary inflation would be added to inflation caused by the drop in the dollar's foreign exchange value, resulting from declining foreign demand for the greenback. Should this come to pass, the implications for the U.S. is massive austerity. Now, for us to understand the implications of what he's saying, okay, we'll go to the dictionary. All right. And we'll say, oh, there it is right there. Austerity. And according to the dictionary, austerity, sternness or severity of manner or attitude, severity, strictness, seriousness, right? And it says grimness. Think about that. So you're going to have massive severity of shortages, massive severities of everything without the dollar. Because think about the role that the dollar plays in everyday life in America and around the world. Again, the situation is so untenable. And I know that this pill is something that no one wants to swallow. And sometimes it seems like we're being harsh because we spell it out to you without a chaser. We give it to you straight, no chaser. But it is not because we want you to be fearful. We want you to be mindful of what is actually going on, because a prepared mind and a prepared man or woman would fare better than an unprepared, unknowledgeable man and woman, especially in a time that's looking like it's going to be Mad Max. I want to go to a clip here. We played this clip before. It's a two-part clip, I believe. No, it's a one-part clip. I want you to listen to this. This is from the man who coined the phrase full spectrum dominance. His name is William Engdahl. He's a German American. He's an author. He's a geopolitical analyst. And this is what he was saying nearly 10 years ago about the situation that America and the Western world now finds themselves in. I want you to pay close attention to this, okay? Please pay close attention to this, because we're going to elaborate on this more, and we're going to bring up a few more articles that go along with this. So please pay attention to this.
Joining us today is best-selling author and economist William Engdahl. He's been writing on issues of energy, politics and economics for more than 30 years. Thank you for joining us today. Recently, we've seen several American banks beat forecasts and record an increase in profit. So is the worst now over for the world's economy?
This is by no means a sign of the end of the crisis. I estimate that we're perhaps 40% into the losses alone in the U.S. real estate sector. And these banks are, when we talk about the banks, we're talking really about at most 7 or 8 huge institutions that are at the center of this crisis, and not tens of thousands of smaller banks in the U.S.
So in your opinion, do you think it's too soon to be optimistic?
It's absolutely too soon to be optimistic in the U.S. The U.S. is the heart of a global problem, the core of the problem. And U.S. financial and banking deregulation since the end of the 1990s is the proximate cause of the problem. And that is a process now that is going to put the U.S. into what I call 10 years of hell. It's going to be worse in some respects than the Great Depression of the 1930s for most Americans. And everything that the current administration and the previous administration have done about the problem is merely going to make it worse for the actual economy.
So now let's shift to Eastern Europe. Now, you've written at great length about the drama that's unfolding there. So could you perhaps paint us a picture about the situation there at the moment, and which countries are most affected?
The problem in Eastern Europe is if you will, a derivative problem of the problem of cheap credit coming out of Wall Street over the last 7 years. And as the Fed lowered its interest rates after 2002, partly to create this real estate bubble and to feed the Wall Street banks' securitization process, the interest rates worldwide came down, the European interest rates and so forth. So banks in Europe were able to borrow money very cheaply and lend it out to Eastern European countries that were in the European Union, like Poland or Hungary or the Czech Republic. I don't see it as the same kind of crisis as the derivatives-driven crisis in the U.S. banks, because there is a real housing deficit after 50 years or so of the controlled economy, command economy, under the Warsaw Pact Soviet Union era. And people do have jobs. This isn't derivative speculation off the books. This is simply normal banking loans. And what the EU governments have done in one form or another is to step in with IMF funds. I'm not a fan of the IMF in any way, but the purpose of the funds was to stabilize the currency so that it doesn't become a speculative target and make the crisis worse. I think for the moment it's quote unquote under control. It doesn't have the leverage potential that the American crisis has.
And Russia is currently in a similar situation, with rumours that many banks will soon go bust if more negotiation doesn't happen with the West sometime soon. So what do you think is the best option available to Russia?
Russia has to, and this is, I think, one thing that the current government and when Vladimir Putin was president, I think he very much tried to do, is to bring the crucial elements of a sovereign nation back under state control. That doesn't say going back to the era of central planning communism, but certainly to control your currency, to control your credit system. These are things that any sovereign nation should rightly have. And in terms of the banking crisis, perhaps there are some banks that would do better if they were nationalized. If the losses are too great, at least nationalized so that they could be then cleaned up from the toxic waste and the bad investments, and that the real economy comes out of this as the healthy factor and not pure financial speculation for the good of a few oligarchs at the expense of the Russian economy and the Russian people.
So how long do you think it's going to take before we see the end of this recession?
The point is, we're at an epochal change. This is something that happens perhaps every 400 or 500 years. This isn't a once-in-a-decade recession that we're living through. And I call it in my new book, which was just released in German, the decline of the American century. This is a terminal decline, as you had with the British Empire after World War I. And it wouldn't matter if Jesus Christ were the President of the United States today. There would be nothing he could do to reverse that decline process. We would almost have to reorganize and start from scratch, because the cancer of this financial system has embedded itself so deeply that they've destroyed industrial technology in the United States. They've outsourced manufacturing over the past 25, 30 years to Asia, to Eastern Europe, all over the world. The American elite has rotted itself from inside out over the past 30, 40 years, since the early 70s. So Europe, including Russia, very much so including Russia, or let's say Eurasia. Eurasia is a vast continent which has every resource man could imagine for anything that we would want to build economically. It has the brain power, it has the scientific talents. We haven't totally destroyed that, as has been the case in the U.S. And that is all we need. It has the raw material. Russia has unlimited technology for unlimited resources of natural gas and oil. The Russian geology is light years ahead of American and Western geology, geophysics, let's say, because it is based on real earth science, real physics, and not on hocus pocus to hide the fact of how much oil the world has. So there is nothing that's lacking. The decision in Western Europe, in the European Union, is for many European elites, I know this from discussions here in Germany in the recent years, they have to make a choice, and they're schizophrenic about that choice right now. Either strengthen the Atlantic Alliance with Washington and go down with the sinking Titanic called the American century, or carefully try to reorient the supertanker called the European Union and build bridges of cooperation with Russia above all, with China above all for economic markets and whatnot.
And what are your thoughts on the US President Barack Obama? Do you think he is the man to control this situation?
No. To my mind, and I said this in print a year before Barack Obama became president, the American power establishment since the time, at least, of Abraham Lincoln, with the possible exception of John Kennedy, has never allowed any candidate to get near the White House who they don't totally control. And that we see that in the case of President Obama. So there is nothing that the Obama administration is doing to rock the boat. He is merely, if you will, a cosmetic change. What do you say? Old wine in new bottles, and that's Barack Obama. He's simply an attempt to deceive, to put the rest of the world off balance. But I think it's certainly wearing thin in the American public. They realize he hasn't done anything fundamental to improve their situation, and he has perhaps another 2 or 3 months before he becomes, like George Bush, the most hated man in America, I think.
You touched upon George Bush there. Now, one of your books that you wrote about looks at the hidden history of oil and money and how that is the hidden cause.
It's actually longer than that. I have both parts. You know, YouTube removed that. They scrubbed that. And I actually downloaded that when that interview was actually done. So I still have it on one of my jump drives or something like that. So it's an excellent interview with F. William Engdahl. But listen, there's some points. Hey, Rashid, I'm getting a little feedback from your phone. I'm getting a little feedback from your phone. And listen, check this out. There was a few points made here that we got to address. There's so much to unpack, but first I have to put Cece, one of our moderators, comments up on the screen. And Cece says, this nation is so broke, it's not paying their tax refunds until March 1st yet. They keep placing demands on others. They deserve long servitude. So let's go first. So Engdahl is a respected geopolitical analyst. As a matter of fact, as I told you, he's the one who coined the phrase full spectrum dominance. And he's the author of several best-selling books in German and in English. Go ahead, Rashid. I want to hit these points that he was talking about.
Wasn't he?
Go ahead.
Wasn't he one of the ones that was with George Soros and then with the hedge funds and made all that money? Or was it somebody else?
I don't know. I don't speak on things I don't know. You know, I'll be the first person to tell you when I don't know something, I don't know it. So I'm not speaking on that. I can do the research and find out, or I can contact him. You know, I showed him contact. I can contact him and see what he says about that. But I mean, I'm not the person to try to pretend like I'm wise on everything and stuff like that. I'm gonna tell you, that's above my pay grade. I don't know that at the moment. But listen, in this thing, he said something that was very profound. He said Putin wanted Russia to gain control of his economy from the West. Listen to me good. He said that and use its commodities to thrive through the real economy and shun the Western speculative economics, the way of economics, while grabbing hold to his resources. This is what he said. Isn't that what Russia did by leaving the money in the banks so that the West could seize it? It freed up their hand to do the things that Mr. Engdahl just said that Russia under Putin was trying to do 10 years ago. This is what it said. So immediately, now I've heard this thing multiple times, and that's the first time that I heard that part. You know how you can hear something, and each time you hear something else. That was the first time I heard that part. So Engdahl is spelling out to you 10 to 12 years ago what Putin is actually doing today. And he says that he talked about how Germany has a choice. And look at the position that Germany is in right now, to either hitch itself to Russia with its unlimited, and Eurasia with its unlimited hydrocarbons and commodities, or go down with the sinking North Atlantic Alliance. What is the North Atlantic Alliance? It's NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty or Terrorist Organization. So we're watching this stuff in real time, what he said 10 to 12 years ago. And he says that Russia is moving away from the Western way of economics, which is hocus pocus. Now, according to the dictionary, when he said that, the first thing I did was go to the dictionary. I was jotting little notes down. And he said, the Western way of economics is hocus pocus. Now, let us find out what hocus pocus means according to the dictionary. Because to understand in depth what somebody is trying to convey to you, one must understand the words that they are speaking to you. Okay? So he used the word or the phrase hocus pocus, which is used in magic, right? You know, on magic tricks, hocus pocus. According to the dictionary, the word hocus pocus or the phrase hocus pocus means talk or activity often designed to draw attention away from and disguise what is actually happening. So again, talk or activity often designed to draw attention away from and disguise what is actually happening. So in reality, he's telling you that the U.S. economy, the Western way of economics, is a magic trick. It's the sleight of the hand, as Rashid always like to say, the 3-card Molly. That's what it is. While you're looking for the bean under the He has it in his pocket or in his hand. And America is that guy that is hustling the people on the street. But more and more people are saying, hey, hold up, didn't I see him put something behind his back? So this is causing them to move away from the dollar. This is causing them to say, you know what? Nah. You can keep that game. I'm not gonna let you hustle me. I'm tired of you turning me out of my money, out of my way. And he said this, which was very important. This is something that we talk black on this show. When we talked about Obama, when we talked about Bush, when we talked about Trump, especially when we talked about Trump, and when we talked about Joe Biden. He says that the elite has the if they control you. House if they can control you. And so this is why they partially controlled Trump, but Trump wasn't being compliant. Hey, I'm the president. He started believing this stuff. I'm the president, so I get to call the shot. He started actually believing that. And when they was constraining him, he started bucking up against the people who were constraining him because he truly believed that as the president, he had the final say on everything. And so this is why you have the brouhaha and the blow up in U.S. politics, as Rashid told you, and he told you multiple times. Trump was not the traditional politician. So when he got into the office, he truly believed that he could put his stamp on everything, and this caused the blow up. And so they removed it. You understand? So this is what we're watching, and it's amazing because when I saw this video, when this interview, when it was first taking place, and I believe the interviewer, she's the daughter to the former president of the Soviet Union, Shevardnadze. You remember the Shevardnadze? I cannot pronounce it.
Gorbachev?
No, Shevardnadze.
Shevardnadze was a Secretary of State.
For Russia.
Yes.
Yeah, well, she's his daughter. She's his daughter, the one that what is her name? She has a talk show on RC. I forget her name, but again, think about how long this interview took place.
And she was the Secretary of State for the Soviet Union. That's who he was, Shevardnadze for the Soviet Union.
Yeah. So you think about that. How long this interview took place. And then you compare it to what is actually transpiring. Everything that Ingdahl said is prophetic right here because we're seeing it in real time. And never lose focus of one thing that he said. It wouldn't matter if Jesus Christ was here. It wouldn't change the situation that the Western world, especially America, is now facing. A total collapse of their system. This is a geostrategist. This is a respected thinker in Western circles. And he was acknowledging the dire situation 10 to 12 years ago. Now think about the time that's passed and the debt crisis, how it's ballooned and how all of these black swans have gotten even bigger and bigger. Go ahead, Rashid.
He's not like these talking heads. They see the city falling down and they say, everything is all right. Everything is all right. That's what those are. But this guy is actually telling you he sees a cataclysmic fall coming.
Yeah. And so on that line, let's go. And there's so much to go. And for those of you who are joining us, at the last minute, I got an email. As a matter of fact, I don't want to show the whole email because some of it is private from Scott. But at the last minute, Scott had to reschedule. Let me go. First of all, we'll see. I'll just put part of it. Wait, hold on. Let me see. Let me see if I can get part of that up there. William Redder. Okay. So some personal things came up that had to be taken care of, so we had to push it back off to next week, and we'll try to reschedule it next week. Okay. So I just wanted you to know that, and it happened like something just told me to check my email. Normally I'm checking my text messages, but something say check your email this time, and it's like 2 or 3 minutes before we went on the air, and I'm like, oh my God, okay. So I had to immediately call him and immediately try to reschedule that show for sometime next week, even though we really don't know the date of next week. I just had to do that quickly so that we can immediately schedule a replacement show, which is this one right now. So all of this has happened on the fly within 2 minutes of the show starting. Okay. So just for those of you who are listening, we don't think that we bamboozled you or lied to you. That's why I showed you the heading of the email or whatever, so that you can understand. Well, we don't have to lie and fandangle people. We try to keep it 100, which we try to keep it above board and tell you the truth. Okay. So now, again, let's read something. I want to go to something. Where is it at? So where is it? Give me a second. Is that it? Yeah, that's it right here. So it said an article came out yesterday. And it says this was on RT. It was published on another site, but it was also published on RT.com. And it says Disneyland, right? For investors, it's over. Nassim Taleb warns. And I think Nassim Taleb is an investor. So listen what it says. Famed author and former trader says the market is not ready for high interest rates. Stop right there. What did Mr. Engdahl say? And what was in the article with Paul Craig Roberts? As nations reject the dollar and do side deals, there will be a tsunami or a major return of dollars, which will cause a spike in interest rates, right? And this will be detrimental to your purchasing power and your financial standing. It is like being taxed again without your knowledge, okay? Because it erodes the purchasing power of the currency that you hold. It goes further and says this. Former banker Nassim Taleb, best known for his bestseller, Black Swan, has advised market players to brace for drastic changes worldwide due to rising interest rates. Now stop right there for a minute, because I want to continue and read this, but I want to bring something to your mind. I remember looking at a few interviews, and this ran over all of last year and even before that. And they were talking about the debt situation of the American empire. And they were talking about how the United States is barely able to pay her interest on her debt. And if the interest rates spike, the interest of her debt would be up over $1 trillion or more, meaning that she would not be able to make the interest payments, or she would have to cut all of this other stuff just to make the interest payments on her debt. Now, this guy is telling you that to brace for drastic changes worldwide due to rising interest rates. What are some of the drastic changes? The rejection of the dollar, right? Meaning it will destabilize the current markets, and it will cause a flood of dollars coming back home. And this will cause a shakeup in the financial order. And it will also cause wealth destruction on scales which you've never seen before. Because if you think about this, if you have $30 million, right, and there's a flood of dollars come back, and I'm doing it on a level that everybody can understand. You have a flood of dollars coming back, and it erodes your purchasing power by 30%. You no longer have $30 million. Oh, I know, but it's gonna be worse than that.
I was thinking, wait a minute, I was thinking $30 million, and then you have $3.
But I'm saying, I'm just giving them on a light scale. You have $30 million, and the purchasing power of your dollar is eroded by 30%. Now that 30 million turns into 20 million. Or if the power of the dollar or the value of that dollar is eroded by 50%, that 30 turns into 15 million. But think about the people who have less than that. Think about the chaos and the anger and the resentment and the frustration that will boil in those people who have less than that. The rich are going to be mad anyhow, but the poor and the middle class, they're going to be outraged because this is reducing them to the beggar. So Mr. Talib, he's warning, and he says in an interview with Bloomberg TV aired on Tuesday, he said that over the past 15 years, investors have grown used to near zero interest rates introduced to drag Western economies out of the 2008 financial crisis. Remember what Mr. Indo said, the hocus pocus, which means meaningless talk, or listen to me good. This is the first word in this definition of hocus pocus. Meaningless. It says meaningless talk or activity often designed to draw attention away from the disguise or from and disguise what is actually happening. Now, it brings to mind, you hear us talk about crackhead politics. Every one of us knows somebody that is on drugs, right? They can talk fast and hustle, and they believe that everybody is a fool and believe what they're saying, even though a lot of the stuff they're saying is to position themselves to exploit you, right? They want to redirect your attention so that they can exploit you. That's what the magicians do. That's why Mr. Ingdahl called it the hocus pocus economy of the West. So this is what this guy is talking about. It's one and the same. So let's go further. He says, and again, ever since I had that, that virus that time, my voice started cracking and I've never gotten it back strong again. So when I'm talking, a lot of the times I have to drink water, and that's serious. Go ahead, Rashid, say something.
Have you ever noticed that any medical physician you go into, you got to have a mask on? Any one of them.
Yeah. So ever since I've had that, my voice is cracked and it's never been strong after that. But we continue to go. So you'll see me drinking water constantly. But let's go further. It says in an interview with Bloomberg TV aired on Tuesday, he said that over the past 15 years, investors have grown used to near zero interest rates introduced to drag Western economies out of the 2008 financial crisis. This triggered a number of asset bubbles, with assets trading much higher than their value. Talib estimates these at more than $500 billion, calling them illusionary wealth. That's what he said, hocus pocus. See, different words, same meaning. And it says, with market valuations out of proportion to companies' cash flow. Again, I'm a real estate agent by trade, right? And when I saw houses that for decades were $65,000, and now you go, those same houses are $350,000. I'm like, man, this is unsustainable. How in the world can this be sustainable? Go ahead.
That's small potatoes around here, bro.
I know.
I bought this house for $274,000 20 years ago. Now they say it's worth $920,000. You see the inflation and then went up. What's going on is this thing cannot be sustained. And people just were plodding along just like automaton. Yes. But the crash is, you sent me that yesterday, the other day, that Russia and Iran and interwoven their banking system.
Yes.
They're not using the dollar no more. I think they said with Russia and Iran and somebody else, or maybe Venezuela, or whatever they hooked it up, they hold 40% of the world's oil.
Yes.
And now Saudi Arabia is getting on board, and that might be up to 50%. What it shows you, if I don't have to have dollars to buy oil, then why should I have dollars in my bank? And if I don't have dollars in my bank, like he said, he can't manipulate me. He can I'll sanction you. That's sad. Who cares what you do? You sanction. That's what they will tell you. Yeah, you got like what the guy in one of the Iranians, I think was the IRGC head or one of them. He said, we're gonna sanction. We put sanctions on it. He said, well, I got any money. If I got any of your American dollars, then you can have it. You can keep it. But we ain't good. This is what the people don't understand. Without holding their dollars, then this dollar has to collapse. You see them big old ships that come up from China, Vietnam, Singapore, Thailand, all them other Asian countries that come over here and bring goods to you. All of a sudden, they're gonna stop because I can't get nothing in my return in my value. I'm not using your dollar. And the dollar to me is like playing with Monopoly money. Mm-hmm. It's unreal. So if they cut that off, you like some of the people be talking about that, well, we want to see something that's tangible happening in my neighborhood. Well, that don't happen in your neighborhood. If you ain't got no goods at all. Like we said, 93% of Walmart's goods and service, goods come from China. If that stops, that's gonna happen to your neighborhood.
Right. That's right.
And it's not just Walmart, Target, Kroger, which is Alpha Beta now. All of them will take a dive off the bridge with no water in it. It's over. Mm-hmm. Don't understand is it's going to hit you very hard. That's what happens when we keep talking about a Mad Max scenario.
Yeah.
Everybody preys upon the other people. The strong prey upon the weak. If you ain't got something, I'm taking it from you. Strong arm, like people like America doing a sanction, which she did Russia. It's worse than taking a gun. I mean, it's better than taking a gun and slapping somebody across his head and strong arm robbery. That's what America's doing. Yeah. I'm gonna take your money, whether you believe it or not. I'm taking it, and you can't do anything about it. So the smart thing if anybody with half of a brain, let me take it, 10% of a brain, would say, well, I'm getting out of your money then. I don't need it no more. Mm-hmm. And his arrogance, his hubris, his sense of I am and there is another has brought him down, bringing him down to the level of the worst. He's gonna be the poorest country on the planet. Mark our word.
Yeah, and it's underway. And again, let's go to something. Mr. Talib says this right here, and it caught my eye. He says Talib estimate these at more than $500 billion, calling them illusory wealth. Now, according to the word illusory, it means based on illusion, not real, delusional, delusive, imaginary, imagined. So when we put that and we put it up against the mean what Mr. Ingdahl was talking about with the hocus pocus, it is the same thing. So they're pretty much saying the exact same thing. But it seems as though now Ingdahl was saying this over a decade ago. Now we have Talib saying it now. Why? Because time and circumstance has brought it into view for Talib, and now he's trying to warn his colleagues of the dire consequences that is coming. But what he'll do, and this is prevalent in almost all of the knowledgeable and upper class. When they talk, you think they're talking to you, but they're actually talking to their colleagues So they use certain words that they know that most people are too lazy to go and look up and to try to understand it, because words, just one word, can change the meaning of a sentence. Just one word can add to or take away from the meaning of what is trying to be conveyed to someone. That's why it is very important that you understand meanings of words. That's why on this program, as we talk to you, when we get to certain words, we give you definition so that you won't be misled by a paragraph or by a sentence or by an article, that you can get the insight of what's going on. So we have this illusionary and this hocus pocus thing, which is telling you that what you see about Western wealth, what you hear about capitalism, is all a lie. It's all the sleight of the magician's hand. That's what it is. So listen, let's go a little further. He says, what do zero interest rates bring? Tumors. This is what he had. Listen, remember when we told you that this stuff was tantamount to a patient being sick and having cancer and not realizing it and then trying to treat the cancer with Band-Aids? Listen what he says. What do zero interest rate brings? Tumors. All these years, assets were inflating like crazy. It's like a tumor. I think it's the best explanation, because you're happy with the growth, but it's uncontrolled growth, and then boom. Now check this out. When he and others were benefiting from this, why didn't they give the people this information then so that they could benefit from it then? Why is it being told now? Because all options are out. That's it. When all X's are blocked and you got to come face to face with that beast or with that monster that you're dealing with, you got to stand there and you got to go down that avenue, because every other avenue has been closed. This is what is going on in the finance situation. This is what's going on with the military situation. This is what's going on in the political situation. It is a dire situation, and it is on the level that it will scare most, if not all, when you learn of the what's coming. Let's go a little further. I want you to pay close attention to this. And we're not Mr. Doom, Bloom, and Gloom. What we're trying to do is inform you of what is going on so that you can better prepare yourself and your family, because what's going on will send you to the bread wagon or to the grave if you are not preparing. Okay? So listen. It goes and he says, what do zero interest rate bring? Tumors. All these years, assets were inflating like crazy. It's like a tumor. I think it's the best explanation, because you're happy with the growth, but it's uncontrolled growth. And then boom, Talib said, explaining that tumors include everything from Bitcoin to soaring real estate prices. I just told you about that real estate. I just brought that up. And it says, according to the analysts, if a company earns less than 4.75% of its value, the current short-term interest rate in the U.S., it is losing money. And with interest rates likely to grow further due to lingering inflation, asset bubbles are likely to burst. It doesn't rain money anymore. Disneyland is over. What is Disneyland? You hear me say that. Disneyland is known for its make-believe. It takes you out of reality into Wonderland, to make-believe. This is what he's telling you. He said it doesn't rain anymore. Disneyland is over. The children go back to school. It's not going to be as smooth as it was the last 15 years, he warned. Talib argued that it is hard to justify current stock market levels unless U.S. interest rates miraculously return to near zero levels, which the Fed will not allow, as it has realized zero rates don't work and create only cosmic growth. What is that? Hocus pocus. What is that? Illusionary, right? And it says, the stock market is way too overvalued for interest rates that are not 1%. And this is unsustainable. Let's go to something real quick.
You know what it remind me of? You know what it
Go
remind me
ahead.
of? Remember
What's that?
game called the which falls on?
Your mic broke up. What did you say?
Too many straws. Remember, they used to have a game called I think it was a break the camel's back, put straws on the camel's back, piling them up. It would break. This is what's taking place. It's like I said before, the Empire State Building built up with cards all the way up there to the high that you can't see. And one day they're gonna put one card on there too many, and they're gonna that big old giant behemoth was there, gonna wind up to be nothing but a house of cards on the ground. That's what's taking place.
Yeah. So look, check this. So he says this: the stock market is way too overvalued for interest rates that are not 1%, and this is unsustainable. Check it. According to the dictionary, the word unsustainable means, and it is an adjective, and it means not able to be maintained at the current rate or level, upsetting, right? Depleting, right? So what we're looking at is a system depleting itself, and it is being unsustained. It's unsustainable. It is not being able to maintain itself at current rate or level. It is in decline. This is why we continue to tell you that the system is parasitic. You know what parasites do? They attach themselves to a host body, and they suck the life's blood to maintain their life. This is what the Western world and the Western Empire has done for centuries. This is what America continues to do. Think about the arrogance of America. While demanding Russia pull out of Ukraine, America is illegally occupying a third of Syria. Illegally. The Syrian government never asked them to come in. The Syrian government has requested for them to leave. And yet they're constantly setting up military bases all across the resource-rich area of Syria. Not the other part. They set military bases by the grain and the wheat supplies. They set military bases up on the gas fields. They set military bases up on the oil fields. That is not by chance. And they say, oh, we're fighting ISIS. We're trying to keep ISIS from taking the oil fields and the grain. That is the duty of the government of the Syrian people to do that. And yet the Western media pushes that out of your mind and wants you to focus on Ukraine. Why? Because the media are tools of the elite to further their goals and their plans of domination at all costs. Go ahead, Rashid.
You got to understand, I am the exception to the rule. Don't put me in your place. I can do what I want to do, and nobody else can say anything. That's what that is. I am the exception. I'm the king, and everybody else is my subjects. And how dare you say that I should be on the same level as Russia? I'm not Russia. Russia is also ran. Iraq, Libya, Syria. He bombed those places up too and got bases. Still in Germany, still in Japan, but don't talk about that now. It was just that bad Russia for attacking my minion over here. Well, haven't you been doing that? Well, I don't consider I'm exceptional. I don't have to jump. You got to understand his mindset. He ain't looking at them other countries as sovereign nations. They are my subjects, and they're supposed to do what I tell them.
Or else pay the consequences. And that's what U.S. military is. As a matter of fact,
war on me.
Since you transitioned to Russia, let us listen to what the foreign minister of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, has to say about all of this stuff concerning America and NATO and their position. Because we're talking on economics, but there's also a geopolitical or military aspect of this and a political aspect of this. All of this is interconnected. Okay, so let's listen to what Mr. Sergei Lavrov has to say as he addresses certain questions and certain issues. Okay, pay close attention.
The goal of the sanctions is much more strategic than just Ukraine. I think what we witness in Ukraine is the quintessence of the Western course, strategic course, to marginalize Russia, to contain Russia, to stop Russia's development, and to reduce Russia to zero role in world politics and world economy, world trade, world sports, art, science, education. And we observe unprecedented steps our Western colleagues are taking. And one of the underlying trends is the United States' desire, which has been much more manifested by the Biden administration, to come back to unipolar world. The European Union already, I think 99% stopped trying to be independent. President Macron, of course, keeps repeating that strategic autonomy for the European Union is his goal, and he would be fighting for it, but my guess is that he would not succeed. Germany is already absolutely ready to be under the United States orders. The leaders of the opposition and of the so-called Maidan, the radicals like Dmitry Yarosh, was saying, we stand for Ukraine without Ruskis and Katsap's, which is Muscovites. And he publicly stated that if the Russians, well, he said the Russians in Crimea would never think Ukrainian, would never speak Ukrainian, would never glorify the heroes, meaning Bandera and Shukhevich and other collaborators of Hitler, then the Russians must be, and that's why the Russians must be swiped out of Crimea. Actually, this was said a couple of weeks before the Crimeans eventually decided to go to referendum. And by the way, the idea that Russians should get out of Ukraine is still very much on the mind of politicians in this country. And President Zelensky, in September last year, said, if you believe you're a Russian, if you believe you want to be a Russian, and if you want to be friendly with Russia, go to Russia. He said this just a few months ago. When people say, when the Americans and Western Europeans and others say that Russia was defeated in the General Assembly because vast majority of countries voted against the Russian action in Ukraine, it's misleading. Because if you take the population represented by the countries who were not voting against Russia, and especially if you take the number of countries who introduced sanctions against Russia, majority of those who voted against us did so under huge pressure, under blackmail, including, I know this for sure, including the threats to individual delegates regarding the assets in the United States, bank accounts, children studying in universities, and so on and so forth. It's absolutely unprecedented blackmail and pressure without any scruples. So majority of those countries who voted with the West, they did not and they would not introduce sanctions against Russia. They believe that it's, not very big price to pay for their own practical cooperation with Russia, just to vote on something which is needed for the West for entirely propagandistic purposes. Recently, the military of Russia, together with Donetsk and Lugansk forces, discovered documents of the Ukrainian general staff indicating clearly that they were preparing a massive attack against Donetsk and Lugansk republics. But another set of documents which was discovered is, as you said, documents related to military biological activity of the United States in Ukraine. The documents with signatures of Ukrainian officials, US military. Those laboratories are created, have been created by the United States all over the world, more than 300 laboratories in various countries, many of them on the perimeter of the Russian Federation and the former Soviet republics, including Ukraine. Ukraine is probably the biggest project for the Pentagon, who is running this show, the Special Defense Threat Reduction Agency of the Pentagon is in charge of this biological activity, and they're developing very dangerous pathogens, including plague, including brucellosis, anthrax, many others. By the way, the Americans some years ago decided that it is too dangerous to do these things on their own soil. So they moved all these threatening and dangerous activities to other countries, and more they concentrate their research and experiments around the borders of the Russian Federation and China. Ukraine understands that Joe Biden, whatever you think of some of his statements, is a very experienced politician, and he understands that it is absolutely inadmissible to establish something like a no-fly zone, to provide planes to Ukraine, and to do other things which will bring the risk of direct confrontation between NATO and Russia just, immediately. But Zelensky also understands that there are much less responsible politicians in the United States who are being agitated by Ukrainian lobby and just driven by Russophobic feelings, and many of them are in Congress. And as you know, they adopt every now and then resolutions condemning Russia, threatening Russia, and I believe he is counting on them pushing the president in the direction of a more confrontational approach.
See, at the end, he verified what Rashid was saying about U.S. politicians not being so sharp. He said they are inexperienced, and he says, and he told America about all of this talk about arming Ukraine with more deadly weapons and establishing no-fly zone, because they're. First of all, let's go back for a second. Oh man, because sometimes this stuff is talked about, and it's in the American public actually believe that this can happen. This is not Iraq. This is not like these smaller nations.
Libya.
You can't establish no-fly zone with Russia. You can't. How in the world can you, with a person that has warplanes that are just as advanced, if not more advanced than yours, and has the best, listen to me, by all accounts, has the best anti-air defense on the planet by decades, not by a couple of years, but by decades. This has been admitted by Western and Eastern political analysts alike. So how in the hell can you establish a no-fly zone? That is, man, I'm telling you, the inebriated masses need to sober up.
They had an air show in Europe, and I think the S-400 was there, and the American Patriot was there. Both of them trying to get clients, and they said the Russians came to them and said, "Well, let's have a contest between the Patriot and the S-400." And they said that the Americans packed up and left. That's what the Americans think about it.
Yeah, and they understand the technological gap in that. So when you hear these military pundits speaking about a no-fly zone, it's either out of ignorance or out of arrogance. But either way, or either or, it will lead to some unknown blowback that will be detrimental to American security. Now, check this out. Again, you know how we tell you You have to watch what is being conveyed. Mr. Lavrov is a politician. He's a diplomat. He's the highest diplomat of the Russian Federation. So when you listen to him, you have to weigh his words to understand exactly who he's talking to and who he's trying to get a message across. As he was speaking in an assault tone to the people, and questions were being asked to him. But behind his answers, he was talking to the elite of the West. And he says about this no-fly zone and the sending of more deadly weapons and to strike Russian territory, he says the politicians and Joe Biden understands that this is absolutely inadmissible. All right. Now, to understand the depths of what he said, let's go to the dictionary. According to Google's dictionary, the word inadmissible means not to be allowed or tolerated. You understand? So he said inadmissible to be diplomatic. But the message was conveyed to the West behind the words that this will not be allowed or tolerated by the Russian Federation. Do you understand how diplomacy is done? But I'm telling you, it is amazing that we are watching this. I want to go back to some stuff that we played a while ago, because all of that has a lot to do with what is happening today in the blowback of American policy. Oh man, the blowback of American policy. Did you see the protests? I got to get to this about Russia and China and America. But did you see the protests in the Philippines? After it was announced that the United States had bribed and had strong-armed the Philippines government to allow them to use 4 military bases. But see, the MSN, they didn't show this on the news. There are massive protests going across the Philippines right now that are demanding that America not be allowed access to Philippine territory or bases, and not to be allowed to stoke tensions in Asia with their natural brother, China. This is going on all across the Philippines, but you would not know that because it's not made any headlines or in the Western press. What say you on this matter, Rashid?
Notice it wasn't with what's the name? Duro, the former president. He wouldn't go along with that stuff.
Yeah.
Duterte, right?
The Duterte.
Yeah, Duterte. They got Marcos Jr. and naturally some of that worthless American dollars, and then all of a sudden a light bulb went on. Yeah, y'all can come on over here, but what he done, it might be his downfall.
Mm-hmm.
That might be his downfall to do something like that. But like you said before, what we're seeing is that the rest of the world is rejecting the American system, the American dollar, the value. Nobody wants to be a part of America. She's no longer the shining city on the hill. She's a harlot that nobody wants to have anything to do with. Because if you allow these American elite to come into your country, the first thing they're gonna do is steal up all of your natural resources. You don't own the natural resources. Some cat in Montana or New York owns it. Yeah, here it is.
So for the people who haven't seen, here is one article talking about it right here. And it was published by an Iranian outlet. And it says, protests erupts as Philippines allows increased U.S. military footprints in the region. I mean, it is, but you're not getting this in the Western press. And these people, as a matter of fact, let me scroll up a little bit. And if I scroll up, maybe you can see that they. So, the signs, Lord Austin, Secretary, and you sit of a lot of those weapons manufacturers. Lord Austin, who was a general, and he went through the revolving door like everybody else and became head of or on the board of those weapons manufacturers, and then got booted right back into the Defense Department, and now he's the chief person in the Defense Department. It says Austin not welcome in the Philippines. U.S. troops out of the Philippines. This is everywhere in Asian news all across Asia, but somehow it hadn't made any of the Western press or most of the Western press. Why do you think that, Rashid? And give us your explanation, because you know America is righteous, so it couldn't be something like
they won't even show you protesting in Europe, France, Germany. It's like all of it is peaceful. But the people are outraged at what's happened to them. The MSN only puts what they want to hear, or what they want to put out for you. They got to keep the people docile. They got to keep them real calm and nice, and so they won't be seeing, like you said, the 3-card Molly, right? What's happening over here? No, not is in his hand. He is deceiving the people to keep them calm, because what Ingdog and the rest of them say is a cataclysm coming. It is a something on a scale of a earth-shaking event. You know, when the entire earth shakes, then you got an event. And that's what's coming to America. Her dollar is everybody can't see it. Especially the average Joe Blow who just worried about trying to get gas and pay his bill and stuff. When this thing hit, this is the reason why they got rid of that Occupy Wall Street. The masses were rising up against these people. And under Obama, they swept under the rug. But when this thing hit, you won't be able to sweep this under the rug. And revolution will overtake you.
Yeah. And I'm going to come back to that, what you say about revolutions will overtake it, because it's something I have on my phone that I want to point to the people before we go off the air. It's something very important about the show and what's going on. Now, for those of you who are joining us now, let me say it again. At the last minute, Scott Ritter hit me up, and he had some personal matters that had popped up, real urgent personal matters. And I showed the people the email heading and everything. I couldn't show the body of it because it was personal. And so we rescheduled. We're gonna find a date that's suitable for him as he takes care of some personal matters that is going on right now. So we had to, at 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes before the show was supposed to start, I had to wing it and schedule this show so that we can continue to go on the air and not just leave you guys up in the air. So this is why we're here, and this is why we're talking about a lot of stuff. But now I want to transition to something, but we're going to come back to the revolutions shortly. I want to play something from last year. Now I want you to pay close attention to this, okay? I want you to listen to who this guy is. I think he's going to identify himself, and then I want you to listen to what he's saying.
But let me just point out the illusion of Russian and Chinese aggression around the world. You'll hear this repeated many, many times that, any day, Russia is going to take over the entire world. China's taking over the world. They're doing all this stuff. If you look at the number of foreign bases between the U.S. and the U.K., we have about 900 overseas military bases where we have troops stationed in foreign countries. The total bases of the Russians and the Chinese, about 35. About 35 in total. China only has 5 overseas bases compared to the 900 or so US, UK. We've created this bizarre illusion because the deep state, the war industrial complex must have enemies. You cannot manufacture weapons when you don't have enemies. And so we create this illusion that they're coming to get us. They're on our doorsteps. And the fact of the matter is that China is out to make a buck. They want money. The Belt and Road Initiative is very important, but they have a different paradigm. Our paradigm is we go into a country, we set up NGOs, we take over, the government by coup. If we can't, then we just bomb the place to smithereens half the time. And you compare that with the foreign policy of China, which is you go in, you work with whatever government is there. You're not judgmental, but you make hard business decisions. You make investments, and I think for people who are comparing the foreign aid paradigm of the U.S. and China, they're saying, my likelihood of surviving is much higher if I follow the Chinese paradigm. So we need to just get away from this feeling that we have to constantly be at war with the entire world. Great Britain has the 21-mile English Channel that separates it from Europe, and that 21 miles has kept it quite safe from invasion over many centuries. There have been a couple of exceptions, and the Vikings came in and different things, bigger ones than that. But in any event, they're basically safe. 21 miles of ocean. You look at us. We've got 5,000, 6,000 miles of ocean separating us from the nearest threats that we perceive. So we probably have less reason to be militaristic than any great nation on earth. And yet here we are. Our budget is, the last I checked, it was as large as the next largest 11 defense budgets of the biggest defense spenders in the world. So we cut a single check to Ukraine that is as big as the entire military budget of Russia for a year. So we need to escape from this illusion that they're out to get us, because they're not out to get us. There is nothing aggressive either in the policy of China or of Russia. And the only aggression is with the US, UK, the NATO countries, which, I look at the history of the wars of the Russian Federation. You have the tiny war in Georgia. You have the war in Syria, which they didn't get involved in until 4 years after the terrorists had been there. And then finally, at the last moment, they agreed to go in at the request of Syria because ISIS and Al-Qaeda threatened to overwhelm the country. Very reluctant, somewhat limited involvement in Syria. And now you have the situation in Ukraine. You compare that to our situation where we've fought multiple wars against Iraq. We fought in Somalia, we fought in Bosnia, we fought in Haiti, we fought in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Yemen, Libya, Uganda, Syria. I probably missed half a dozen wars that we fought. We fight everywhere. You can literally have a soldier who retires with 30 years active service in the U.S. Army, and he will retire and never have served a single day when the United States was not invading and occupying some country. So to compare that with the situation with Russia and China, where has China fought? Who have they invaded? They've had a couple little border disputes, but that's it. They don't invade people. We invade people. So we need to get away from this illusion. If we could ever break away from the illusion that they're out to get us, which is totally false, then we could start chopping back on our defense budget. World tensions could reduce, and we could get back to making cell phones or whatever we do for a living, and have a genuine economy that wasn't based on killing people in foreign countries. That's what we ought to do.
So, was a former state senator and former colonel in the Marines telling you about the situation. And here is something that should be understood also. There was a study that came out on the 19th of March, 2017. Now, mind you, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. That's 6 years ago, right? And in these last 6 years, we've been at war, right? The United States has been at war. So we're going to add more to this. There was a study that came out, and the statistics said that the U.S. has been at war for 222 years out of 239 years of its existence. So now you have to add 6 more years to that. So out of 245 years, the United States has been at war 228 of those years. Who is the warmonger? Who is the bloodshedder? Who is the one hell bent on domination? Right back in the booth. He had got knocked off, and I was trying to wait for him for me to see him, and now I see him in the stream. I saw him waving his hand. I'm glad you waved your hand. I didn't see you until you waved your hand. All right, go ahead, Rashid.
Once again, who does it tell? What does the Bible tell us? That he who loves to make war, the Lord of the worlds will come and put an end to his war making.
That's right.
That's proof on the page of history. This is not our opinion. This is facts. He loves to go and start trouble.
And always talking
now,
about
if you
peace.
believe your scriptures, who is the one that God would come and put an end to? The war maker, the one who loves to shed blood.
And how do you do that? You attack the economy. You attack the dollar. And that is what's going on now. You see nations now that are teaming together, separate. They're too small and inadequate to handle the empire. So they get together, and they're finding out that having friends gives them more confidence, and having allies helps them to go through the pressure that the empire would put on you. So now they're doing trade outside the dollar, which means that they are attacking the very core of American imperialism and Western privilege, which is the economic foundation. And being that they're moving outside of the dollar, they are killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Because with the dollar, you have the pound sterling, or the sterling pound, tied to that. And you have the euro, which is an American concoction, tied to that. So when you remove the dollar as the principal currency of the world, you are also weakening the pound and the euro, and it's forcing them to live within their own means. And Europe, being in a very, very tenuous and precarious situation, has little to no resources. So that would remove them from ever being a global player again, because you can't fund your military escapades when your currency is only worth so much, and you're indebted past your eyeballs, past your head. So you can't go on these the colonial conquests. America's the same way. Britain is the same way. So you see them being chopped down. That root of prosperity, an axe was laid to the very root of prosperity of the Western world. And we're seeing, because of this intervention in Syria, this intervention in Libya, this intervention in Yugoslavia, in Yemen, and especially in Ukraine, forcing Russia, who always wanted to be accepted by the West, to turn its back to the West and go into a union with nations who always welcomed her in, which are the Eastern Bloc. Go ahead.
Also, what's going on is she cannot, with Europe having no gas from Russia. Cheap Russian gas fueled their rise. They didn't have to bring in, they didn't have to bring in a lot of oil from around the seas and stuff. The gasoline pipelines are just coming straight from Russia into Europe. That's cut off now. Now she got to go around the world and compete with others in the gas market. China buying up everything, all the oil that you want to sell. China buy. Now, what does that do? That makes the European Union have to compete against China for the oil. And China is the behemoth. She got all of the money. They don't. So that tears them down because they don't have the vehicle for their rise.
Right.
Instead of what they having the European people do? Take 10-second showers.
Or tell them to pat down. They're patting down now.
Yeah. I'll go chop up some wood and stuff. All that industry that Europe has collapses.
Also, don't forget this, because in the midst of all of this, when we talk about she gets all of her gas from Russia, she actually gets some of it also from Algeria. Algeria has a pipeline, a huge pipeline that goes from Algeria to Morocco and up into Spain or whatever like that. So she also gets a lot of her natural resources from Africa. And so with alienating Africa and alienating Russia, you're cutting off both of your hands in spite of your face.
But Algeria is allied with Iran and Russia.
And China.
Yeah. Everybody that she's been pissing on is getting together and saying, we're going to stop this stuff. But with her arrogance, she cannot see the forest for the trees. Only thing, like you said, when you have a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail.
General Wesley Clark. Yeah.
And remember, they ain't got no diplomats no more.
In real time?
No. Henry Kissinger was sharp as a Ginsu knife. He could charm these cats up and down. No more. They don't even have a Jim Baker or James Baker. No Cyrus Vance. None of these top-notch diplomats who are on the level of Lavrov. What did Lavrov and the rest of them call this Blinken? They call him Little Blinky Boy or something like that. They dismiss him because he don't know what he's doing. And then Trump didn't know what he was doing. Put that nut Pompeo in there. Who is a CIA man? He wasn't a diplomat. Only thing he can see about is lying, cheating, and stealing. And when they pull their stuff off with this Minsk II and got Russia to go along with it, now Russia looked like fools. You can't get that no more. You can't get Russia to agree with anything.
My thing is this. I don't think they look like fools. I think that was strategic. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. Sometimes in battle, listen, in battle, sometimes you have to pull back, and what appears to be a loss is preparation for a strategic offensive. And I believe that is what happened when it came to that. They was willing, just like when they pulled out of one of the regions in Ukraine, and the West made this brouhaha about it. And the Ukrainians are taking this out. Russia pulled out so that they can make advances on other ends because they didn't have the troop strength there at the time. So to avoid losses, they pulled back, which seemed like Ukraine was winning. And now look what's happened. I think it was a strategic move.
That may be so. But to the general public, they look like they pulled the wool over their eyes.
Right.
And they're not going to do that no more.
Yeah, and I believe Vladimir Putin actually used that to his advantage because he was able to show his people, look, I did everything I could to negotiate with them in good faith, and look at what they have done in return They are hell bent on the destruction of the Russian Federation. So now you have to bag me so that I can use every means available at the Russian Federation to defend our sovereignty and our security. So I believe that was a master stroke. I do believe that. But let me get to something.
No matter what it did, Russia is putting Putin and the rest of them are put in a position now that they can never do that again. They cannot agree on anything.
Never.
That Russia, America goes for. As we were saying before, and I'm gonna have to get out of here myself. What we were saying before is that Russia, Putin and them should cut off the access. So if you spend a lot of oil to China and India and the rest of them, I send you some oil, you can't sell it to Europe because they're at war with me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to sanction Europe. Cut them off. And let's see how big and bad, how much they'll rear up and talk like they had the last night. We're going to fight against Putin and we're going to blah, 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 blah. Cut him off. Like I told you before, the brother used to say, cut the water off. Cut their water off. If you're in a house, right, and somebody cuts your water off, your braggadocious self is not going to be so quick to run your mouth of what you going to do if you ain't got no water in your house. You can't even flush the toilet. So this is what Lavrov was saying, even in that interview that you have, our Western colleagues. Haven't it dawned on you that you don't have no Western colleagues? You got enemies. And you need to treat them as such.
No. Now I want to say this before we go off the air. Look, let me put this up here on the. I don't know if it can be seen here. This is what was done a few days ago to us. Now let me read it to you. I didn't know that they even put this on there. We don't attack race. We're not advocating violence against a particular race. We're not advocating violence towards a particular religion. All we're doing is reporting facts. And this is what YouTube puts up now on our channel on certain videos. The following content has been identified by the YouTube community as inappropriate or offensive to some audiences. What have we said that's offensive? Put it like this. What have we said that is contrary to the truth? And if we have not said anything that's contrary to the truth and you are offended, it's not that you're offended by you're offended by the truth.
And remember, the truth hurts the guilty.
That's right. That's right. And I want to say this to Kat Notchka. You're very welcome. We're going to continue to put this information out. And I don't know if that's a Russian name or whatever, but we're going to continue to put truth out as long as we're able to. So you guys can sign up to all of our platforms, locals. It's the empowermentoftruth.locals.com. It's the Red Pill Diaries community. You can also go to Rumble, sign up on Rumble, go to Twitter. I forget the Twitter handle. Go to Twitch, and it's twitch.com/Red Pill Diaries, and go to Odyssey. Sign up to our Odyssey, please. And also hit the like button so that as they take us out of the search engine, they'll be forced to put us back in because they continue to take subscribers from us and take likes from us. But we're going to continue to endure this to give you the truth. Now, in closing, as I said, revolution. They did that on the show that we talked about, revolution, and what is it? It was called the politics of war and color revolutions, because we were talking about the means which America employed to change governments and then act as though she's for democracy. So I guess that offended the State Department, and I guess that offended the Defense Department because YouTube has flagged us for that. So in closing, Rashid, what do you have to say to our audience? And we thank them for listening and being a part of this.
The truth hurts. Like I said, truth hurts the guilty. That's all we're going to tell you is the truth. Even if the truth is against us, we're going to tell it to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's what gets most people upset, the truth. If it wasn't hurting you, then why get upset? If this little bitty show was not hurting the lies that you told, why get upset? We get, matter of fact, we might be the most banned on the internet. I see all of
Mike, we are.
I see.
What show do you know gets banned in the middle of a live broadcast? We have it in the video. We were banned doing it in the middle of a live broadcast. They had to
and we wasn't doing nothing but telling the truth.
So
now if we get up here and start lying to you or talking about some sports or some filthy videos and stuff, we would never get banned. But what we are saying is hurting their lives.
Yeah. And especially with the video evidence and the articles that back up what we're saying. Truth is truth. Either deal with it or don't. On that note, we'd like to thank you all for giving us your time. Listen, as we often say, time is the most valuable commodity that any person could ever give, because once it's spent, you can't get it back. So we hope that we have given you an equal or greater value for the time that you have spent with us. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Know that I love you, he loves you, but God will always love you best. And as always, mama, your baby boy loves you with all his heart. Peace.